What light do you want to share with our audience during LGBTQ plus Pride Month?
Yeah, I guess I can talk a bit about that kind of in relation to my writing. I feel like right now I've been thinking a lot about uh, ending cycles and like apocalypses in a positive way. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to destroy in order to transform and what those cycles can look like. Um, I think for me, through the lens of looking at inherited trauma and what we do with those intergenerational cycles, and how we might want to um, create new worlds out of a feeling of like rage and anger, and um, a desire to be free of fear. I think is something that I've been thinking about a lot in my writing.
Yeah, and I think some of those themes, from what I noticed, they run through the work of each writer who's participating tonight. And so I think it's going to be an interesting discussion later on to respond to each other's work and what we hear. Golden, how about you in terms of what light you want to share this month, or where you are on this journey?
I don't know, what light might be a hard question, but I feel like where I'm at, I love June because June is always Juneteenth month. It's a month of right, it's in these times of usually deep resistance, but also deep like nation building as well, like deep collaboration that I really enjoy about June. I'm a Sagittarius and I try to focus on the optimism part of that. So I don't know, I don't really, I feel like, I don't know if I have any light to share, but I feel like, I don't know, being with people, I was talking before, me and Natalie met this past week because we had a reading together, and just being in community with different Black and POC writers and queer writers at this time, I think it's the light that I kind of grapple onto and kind of hold on to. I feel like I'm a person who usually stays in the house for events and stuff like that. And so I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to the literary award. And I did some couple events, a little bit more than I'm used to. So I feel like that's the thing that I'm holding on to, and I feel like can offer to people. I feel like writing and also reading is a way to kind of bring us together. So yeah.
I love hearing that and the importance of getting together. Natalie, how about you?
Yeah, I think very similar to what Golden mentioned. I had the privilege of doing a couple of readings with people that I'm in communities with, and I think it really goes back to the line where Frank O'Hara said, "In times of crisis, we must choose again and again whom we love." And I think it's feeling especially true now. It's also really interesting, the whole thing about Pride being right after Asian Heritage Month. And why it's so interesting is because I feel like for me, every corporation was like, "We've always loved Asians," and in June they're like, "We've always loved gay people," and I'm like, it's really fascinating. And I think it's it's incredible that we're bombarded with these ads where Google suddenly we've always loved queer people, and it's such a reminder that representation in politics and assimilation will not save us, in writing, in art, in real life. And it's also something to hold on to as we create work, kind of just remembering that there are so many forces out there that demand allegiance from us. And that's something I'm definitely thinking a lot about.
I love hearing that. You know, we are exposed to a lot of shiny, happy words about, you know, it's almost like a utopian corporatist view of like, we've always loved LGBTQ people. But I think one thing I appreciated in all of your writing was a resistance to those simple positive narratives. And I may ask a question later on more about the darkness and to some degree spectacular or horrific in your work as well, because I think that was something that I noticed. I do want to also ask, to get us started, thinking about the theme of the series of mindful journeys, personally or in your artistic career. I'm wondering, you know, if you could give us a short synopsis of where you've come from and where you hope to go. K-Ming, how about you? Start us off.
Oh, I don't know if I should be starting off. I feel like my mind takes a little bit to get going. But yeah, I think where I come from is the question is like about where we come from and where we're going and how we see that journey. Yeah, I feel like in some ways it's my journey is like a circle. It's actually just a loop that kind of goes right back around. I feel like I inherited such a love of storytelling and language and oral history from the women in my family and from the community that I grew up with. And so I feel like my work is like constantly circling those inheritances and that oral history. And I feel like I'm continually just circling and headed toward those obsessions. I think I'm also really interested in the role that desire plays in our lives. I had a teacher who always used to ask, like, oh, when does desire enter the story? And I loved I love that so much because I was like, oh, I feel like writing is this place where you can sit down and think about like, what do you want? What do these characters want? What can be unlocked through like collective desire and collective wanting and yearning as well. So I feel like my work also returns to those forces too.
Interesting. And I think this question of inheritance and familial connections and whether those are aligned with desire or not is something that we all grapple with in our lives. And to be able to, as you say, focus the writing on that question and explore it, I think is really interesting.
I feel like I'm very similar. I mean, like similar but different, right? Like I'm from the South. I was born and raised in Virginia. My family's from Eastern Shore, Maryland. And that is what my kind of writing is kind of obsessed about. It's about Blackness. It's about Southernness. It's about fortifying a people and a nation and a land that is stolen, right? And it's about like, what does purpose mean on stolen land in a nation that like it has never been for Black people, and constantly uses Black people as mules and as service. And like, how do you find freedom in that? Like, that's the things that I'm obsessed about, like freedom, actually. Like, I care less about justice than I do care about freedom. And I think that those freedoms are personal. And I think those freedoms are sometimes very small, right? Like being able to exist, being able to love in public, being able to be loved, these things that I'm thinking about. And I don't know, like, I think similar to K-Ming's, like, I'm obsessed with the circling. Like, I'm obsessed with how I feel like as far as I get away from home, I keep coming back. I think there's like a line I'm thinking of in one of my poems, like, you have to run away to love your country back. And I feel like that's what I'm kind of obsessed about. And so I feel like I'm like, I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm always coming back.
Interesting. Yeah. Destination is not necessarily a place far away. Maybe it's some, somewhere close by that we revisit. Interesting. Natalie, how about you?
Yeah, Golden, I really love the way you phrased it, especially because so much of my work also touches on ideas of nationhood and borders. And so yeah, this theme of mindful journeys is really interesting because it resonates with my work in a variety of ways. I like the question about journey because I wrote a majority of the collection while living between visas. And so that was a literal geographical and political journey for me. And when I talk about circling the landscape of rage and grief in many senses, that was an actual, like a physical landscape for me to traverse the water that's between where I was born and where I am now. And in a more metaphorical sense, having to kind of travel between rage and grief and learn to hold these things better. And also kind of transforming that in new ways in my life. Like right now, I'm actually in an interesting stage where I'm not necessarily just devoting myself into writing as a craft. I'm exploring a lot of art and pottery, especially thinking about how pottery could be a narrative practice, which is something that is very new and interesting to me. And so I think my journey is trying to figure out what does it mean to create towards life rather than away from death, even though the two things are often very intertwined.